Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we learn and practice Reiki at the intersection of our own self-reflection, the origins of this spiritual practice, and social action. My name is Michaela. I'm so glad to have you back. I mentioned in my last video, which I will link at the end of this one, that we're doing something a little special this month. We're inviting you, our YouTube family, along on a practice that we share every season, a 21-day journey to the solstice or the equinox of that season. And we explore in that time particular practices and themes and teachings from the origins of Reiki and lay those alongside our modern lives and what is present for us in this season. And as we enter into the season of spring, 20 days from today, we wanted to explore creative process. We wanted to explore what it feels like to engage with our Reiki practice alongside an artistic or creative practice. In this case, poetry. And as it turns out, poetry is actually deeply entwined with the history of Reiki, as it was part of the practices of our founder, Mikao Usui. And I wanted to invite Joe along today to talk with us a little bit about that and to engage this practice with us. You haven't seen Joe on this channel yet, but he's been lurking in the background this whole time because Joe is actually my co-teacher of all of our Reiki classes, of these 21-day practices, and he's my collaborator in all of the teachings and learnings and explorations that we do here at Heartscape. So it was about time we had you in this space, and I love that you'll get a chance to share some of the things you've been learning about the history of Waka poetry and its relationship to Reiki.
Thanks, Michaela. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So Waka poetry, this is something that is kind of in the outskirts often of a Reiki education in the West, but one that we really want to center. And so I'd love for you to just tell us a bit about what Waka is, a little bit about its history in brief, and what it has to do with the practice of Reiki.
Well, one of the things that we've learned is that Mikao Usui selected 125 Waka poems that were written by the Meiji emperor at the time, and this person actually was known to be really prolific in this creative expression and composed something like nearly 100,000 poems in his lifetime. The Empress herself also composed something like 30,000. One of her poems, Waka poems, is a favorite of mine.
And so what role did these poems have at the time?
Well, as near as I've been able to piece together from studies, Usui used these as expressions, like we might have uh, common expressions. Maybe some people have expressions that maybe come out of the Bible or some cultural traditions they come from. We hear phrases like, don't count your chickens before they hatch, things like that. So it seems to me that as I've seen some of this, Usui used some of these poems to make a particular point uh, in in uh, in Reiki training, in Reiki practice with some of the students.
And that's kind of how they functioned in Japan generally, right? As ways to impart like small little tidbits of wisdom that were reflective of the spiritual and cultural thought of the time and easily disseminated through this poetic form.
Yeah, these are really short. We're probably a little bit more familiar. You may be familiar with haiku. Same thing, similar kind of a thing. A very short, very concise, 5 syllables, 7 syllable, 5 syllable pattern in the Japanese language. And Waka is similar to that. There are 2 additional lines after that haiku 575, 2 more lines of 7 syllables for 31 syllables, and it's a very precise, fixed poetic structure around which this amazing emotional expressiveness occurs for the Japanese people. It really intensely expresses feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. And haiku is a form of waka. Yeah. That it's or
I'm
they're
still kind of
related.
looking at that. They're
Mhm.
related culturally, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you've picked one to share with us today for our practice. So Joe has picked one from the 125. We may return to these and introduce a couple others later on in this series, but we wanted to start with one that we've actually used in classes before, and one that feels really, just really juicy in terms of our Reiki practice. And so as we move into our meditation, as we did yesterday, I'll just guide you into this simple practice. And then at a certain point, Joe will read this poem. He's going to read it to us in Japanese as well as the English translation. We'll talk a little bit about why we did that at the end. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
This particular poem we actually use in our Shinpiden Mystery Teachings third level Reiki class as a part of a practice where we're contemplating on this poem. Its English translation actually to unify or purify, in a sense, our mind together with our body, together with breath, voice, word, speech, energy, to bring those into a unity, into a purification place.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
What-
So I'll lead us in.
yeah,
So, as we did yesterday, we're just going to settle ourselves in for a bit of practice together. So, just invite you to settle your body into a posture for practice, allowing your body to feel supported by the structure of your skeleton as well as the structure of the support that you're sitting on or standing on. And allow that supportive structure to be strong enough and upright enough to allow your muscles to relax. So I just invite you to take a couple of breaths and consciously relax the muscles of your belly, of your chest, your shoulders, of your jaw, and anywhere else that you might be holding tension today. And as our body comes into posture for practice, I invite you to bring your breath into posture. And the posture of our breath is a gentle, even, easeful breath, in and down, allowing the softness of your belly to let the body expand with the inhale, taking up more space, allowing the breath to flow in and down and reach all the way down to the low belly. Let's take a couple of breaths, letting the softness of your belly and the rhythm of your breath come together so that your breath moves slow in the body. And if it's helpful to place a hand on your belly to help guide your breath here, I invite you to do so. And as you breathe in this way, begin to bring your mind into a posture for practice, allowing your attention to follow the sensation of the breath in and down, resting your attention on the movement of the breath, drawing your focus, drawing your mind into your low belly, and resting your mind here. Taking the next few breaths to see if you can practice resting your mind, focusing your attention on the space a couple inches below your belly, deep into the center of the body, the space of the hara. And as you continue to breathe, begin to sense or imagine that here in your low belly, in the hara, you find a spark of light. And as we did in yesterday's practice, we'll sense or imagine that as we inhale and rest our attention on the spark of light at our low belly, that spark begins to grow brighter. It begins to expand, and on our exhale, it expands in all directions to fill and surround. Let's just practice this visualization for a few rounds of breath. Following the breath with our attention in and down, coming to the low belly, connecting with this spark of light, this spark of life that rests here at all times. Your spark of life. And as you breathe into it, it begins to grow brighter and expand. And as you exhale, it fills you and surrounds you and continues expanding. And let's just practice that for a few rounds of breath. And as your sphere of light reaches out from your center into the spaces around you, touching the web of life within and around you, I invite you to breathe in the words of this Waka poem. Let it enter you and expand within you and around you.
Asami dori sumi watari keru o zoro no hiroki wo noga kokoro tomogana. Asami dori sumi watari keru o zoro no hiroki wo gana kokoro tomogana.
And just breathing in the energy of that, and sitting it with it for a few moments.
Asami dori sumi watari keru o zora no hiroki o noga kokoro tomogana.
And continuing to breathe in and down, drawing your attention into your hara, resting your focus in your center. I invite you to take in this translation and notice which words or images stand out to you in this moment.
As the great sky and the spring green fields, I wish my heart could be as clear and broad. As the great sky and the spring green fields, I wish my heart could be as clear and broad.
And breathing in the part of this that's for you today. Let's take 5 more breaths together, sitting with this poem.
As the great sky and the spring green fields, I wish my heart could be as clear and broad.
And one final breath here. And giving yourself a gesture of completion. And as you feel ready, returning to this room. Thank you for bringing that today. I love using these poems in our classes. I love using them in my own practice. I wonder what came up for you as you worked with this poem today.
Well, I really like just sitting in the energy, the spiritual energy, the Reiki of the words without my left brain, my head getting getting in there, and it's heard it in the Japanese. Almost like forces that since I'm not a speaker of the Japanese language.
Yeah.
And so just being in that space and sitting in that, like without judgment, without making meaning, to just see what arises is the first piece that I really love.
Yeah, absolutely. God, there's so much richness in, receiving a piece of art in its original form, right? Whether that's a poem being read in its original language or, a movie that's a black and white movie and not seeing it colorized, like seeing it in its original form. There's something really powerful about that. And so I love working with these original forms and then working with the various translations, because as we've talked a lot about together and in our classes, translating Japanese to English is not straightforward at all. There's vast differences between the forms of the two languages. And so that can lead to some mistranslations. It can lead to a wide variety of different translations that get presented for any given piece. But inside of that difficulty and that challenge, there's also quite a bit of creative room, right? So there's actually several different translations of this poem that we found, and we kind of chose the one that felt right to share. But in that, it's really interesting to see which words jump out, which images, which feelings. For me, I noticed that, you know, as you read that piece about I wish my heart could be as vast, or, you know, whatever the specific wording of that was, you know, first of all, just noticing this sense of longing inside of the poem. And this happens a lot in these Waka poems. There's this, you know, phrasing around, I wish that this could be so, or if only this could be, or oh, that it was this way. There's a lot of language that kind of expresses this like aspirational feeling, right? We're aspiring to something, which is part of why it's works so well as a spiritual artistic form, right? Because it's inviting us to aspire to something. And when you reach that part in the poem, I just noticed that my body responded, like my shoulders came back a little bit, like my heart actually, like my body wanted to literally make more room, right? Like make more vastness around my heart. And I really appreciated that, the way that this like poetic form, this simple, short phrasing, actually kind of worked on my body in a way that like almost gave it instructions, right? Like put more room around your heart, put more spaciousness around the inside spaces of your body, which has an impact on the spaciousness of our mind, the spaciousness of our voice, of our energy. We talk a lot about the connection between body, mind, and voice, and the principle of Sanmitsu in Japanese spiritual traditions. And so I just really felt that in my body when you read that part of the poem.
Yeah, there's another translation that really, so like, you can really feel that in it. Like, oh, that my heart and soul could grow, could broaden,
Yeah.
which is the one translation we
Mm.
use, and be, even more open and
Yeah.
clear.
And the really, you know, the wonderful thing about that in terms of our Reiki practice, right? So like bringing that back to, you know, how does this serve us in our daily life? For those of us who choose to take Reiki up as a practice, is that it's not implying that is an impossibility, right? Again, it's an aspirational phrase. It's inviting us into a practice that actually results in having those sensations of vastness, of spaciousness, of our heart and soul and mind, and even our body actually, you know, growing in the sense of our own limitlessness. And so it's in a sense foreshadowing what Reiki can do for us as a practice if we turn to it diligently in our lives, is to grow our sense of our own vastness, our own limitlessness, and our connection to things like the blue sky, like the spring grass, like the elements of nature that build us, that build these spaces that we're in. So
Yeah, another exciting thing you were asking me, what came as I was experiencing this again, this particular waka, is the blue sky, the great sky, the vastness of that. So, like from my Chinese American heritage, going back to its connections with China, the North part, Mongolia, and the terms used by those ancient peoples, where they call the heavens or the heavenlies, with almost kind of a like an honoring of that which is divine, right?
Mhm.
Bigger than ourselves, and always there and always is. That spaciousness, and that, sometimes we use this word in Reiki, emptiness, but it doesn't really mean like nothingness. Like it really, it's like such infinite spaciousness that everything is there, every question, every answer is there, and we're in that spaciousness, and that spaciousness is in us. It's kind of a mystery there. Yeah. So
yeah,
the blue sky, the great sky. Yeah.
all of that from a 5-line poem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, friends, we hope that you enjoyed that little introduction to Waka poetry, that introduction to the connection between this particular poetic form and the history of Reiki. We'll be returning to Waka in this series again, I'm sure. And tomorrow we will be here again with another poem from our collection, and exploring how that feels to be in a creative, poetic experience inside of our Reiki practice. As I mentioned before, if you would like to participate in this project, we really invite you to do so. There's a number of ways you can do that. We really would enjoy engaging with what these poems mean to you. So we'd love for you to share in the comments any words or images or metaphors or thoughts or feelings that stood out for you as you heard the poem and engaged the practice. if you would like to share one of your favorite poems and experience it in this way, we would love to have you do that. You can just share that poem in the comments, or if you'd like to actually join us here on one of these videos, we would really invite you to do that. You can reach out to me in the comments or via email, which I'll drop in the show notes below. And whichever way you choose to engage with us, we really appreciate having you here for this journey, for this experiment, 21 days of practice on YouTube. First time we've done this, taking this form that we've been using seasonally for over a year now and bringing it into this space. So we hope that you enjoy it. We'd love your feedback. And in whatever way you choose to engage, in whatever you do for the rest of your day today, moving forward, we hope that you are deeply provisioned for that journey. Thank you so much for joining us. We love you. We'll see you next time.
Love to all. Bye-bye.